So it was the 1970s in 770, Brooklyn, New York. And the Rebbe instituted this custom of after the Farbrengen, when people would come together and study Torah in the grand hall of 770, the Rebbe would distribute dollars for tzedakah, for people to give out to charity. And people would give more than that dollar to the charity of their choice. They would add in, some of their own money, but it would really encourage people to take this attitude of giving. And a lot of times people would actually hold on to that dollar that the Rebbe gave them and substitute it for a different dollar that they would give to tzedakah, along with more money that they would give to tzedakah. But the way that it ended up working out is that after the Farbrengens would go till late into the evenings. The Rebbe was distributing these dollars late, middle of the night, and then sometimes the Rebbe would call for what we'd call the tankistim, the people who go on the tanks, the mitzvah tanks, and they would drive these, mitzvah tank mobile homes to public areas to help people do different mitzvot, Shabbos candles, tefillin, talk about learning Torah, and people who would go on the students who would go on these tanks. He would give a stack of dollars to distribute. And one time in 1983, when they were celebrating Farbrengen on the day that the Tzemach Tzedek, whose his name was also Menachem Mendel, who the Rebbe was named after, but a number of generations back, the third Chabad Rebbe, on his yard site, he was doing this Farbrengen Saturday night, and it was late Saturday night, and he started distributing the dollars, and then he poses a question or an idea from a famed last will and testament by a great chassid who's called Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid from the 12th and 13th century, where he writes in his tzava, in his will, that a person should not give tzedakah or distribute money on Matzei Shabbos at night, on the evening after Shabbos. And the Rebbe points out how his, the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, would point it out to that his father would not give out any money on Saturday night. He would even ask his own wife, who was taking care of all the finances of the home, was called Beikaras Abayis, that if you need money, ask me for it Erev Shabbos, before Shabbat comes in, or Sunday, but not Saturday night. That's still a sacred time connected to Shabbos. It's evening, and those distributions didn't happen at that time. So the Rebbe poses the question: so why here are we giving out money for tzedakah? And then says, but it has a good precedent. In today's time, it says everybody does big gala dinners, and they're always at night. As a matter of fact, a lot of the Jewish fundraisers are specifically Saturday night. And a very practical reason for that is, well, Wall Street's closed Sunday, and people could stay late and they could hear the whole talk, but there must be some sort of deeper reason as to why now it seems to be like the tide has changed, that now it's okay to collect or to give tzedakah at night, whereas previously, in previous generations, it was something that was not done. So welcome, Varda. How are you?
Hi, good. Thank you. Sorry I'm late.
No worries. We're talking about perhaps one of the most famous wills ever written in Jewish history by the famed Chassid, Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid. he was a great master of the esoteric Torah, and he wrote a lot of books, but perhaps one of his most famous writings is called the Tzava of Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, the last will and testament of Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid. He writes a list of 70 items, precautionary things, little short things that to do or not to do, that are sometimes very mystical in nature, spiritual dangers, the evil eye, certain things to be cautious about in regards to demons or other sort of esoteric wild stuff. You could read through it, and it's a lot of the practices that he writes are so well known and so commonplace in today's day and age that they say that if only he had written the 10 commandments in his will, then people would have kept those too, you know. But some of them you might have heard of, like not to marry off 2 children on the same day, or if you have a tzaddik at a bris, the person who holds the baby when they're doing the circumcision, you shouldn't honor the same person to be the tzaddik for 2 babies in the same family. And or if you leave your home, you shouldn't take the mezuzahs off the door, because then it's dangerous for the home. You should leave the mezuzahs up even when you're not in the home. Or if you travel along the way and you forgot something, rather than returning back to your house, you should have somebody else go in and bring it out for you. You shouldn't go back after you've already left your home. And a number of other things, like, okay, when you're building your house, it shouldn't be taller than the community synagogue. And
can you share this list with me at some point? I wouldn't mind looking over this.
So anyways, one of the things that he writes, which is negayar and pertinent to our conversation tonight, is that he writes that we shouldn't give charity at night. And so this is something that people have taken seriously throughout the ages, and it seems to be, once the Jewish people came to America, that the custom had changed, and now every gala dinner is at night, and all the big fundraisers for, I'm talking even and especially for Jewish causes and events, like the 10 Yad auction, which is an organization that helps young brides, you get married or set up their home. They'll do their fundraising auction in the evenings, Saturday night. And a lot of the other big organizations, they'll put on big parties with sushi and whatever, and it'll always be Saturday night. So the Rebbe says the fact that these aren't just laymen who are organizing these events, but the Jewish community and the scholars, and there must be something about it or something to it that makes it okay. So to explore this concept of giving charity at night, or why there might be a problem ever giving charity. I mean, it's like, how can there ever be an issue with that? I want to open up the Jerusalem Talmud together with you, and we're going to read a very fascinating episode about Rabbi Chanina bar Papa. Now, Rabbi Chanina bar Papa was a 3rd generation of Talmudic scholars living in the land of Israel. He was very familiar with all the Aggadic texts, and there are different places in the Talmud where he's kind of like on a first name basis with the angel of death himself. And he's had different encounters and stuff like that are recorded in other places. But to zoom in over here, I'll share the screen and we'll read this Jerusalem Talmud together. Rabbi Chanina bar Papa haya mechalek mitzvah shel tzedakah b'leilos. Rabbi Chanina ben Papa would distribute charity at night. One evening, the minister of evil spirits confronted him. Amar le Rabbi Chanina bar Papa, he said to Rabbi Chanina bar Papa, "Loi kach lamadu Rabbeinu davar hakasuv loi sasi gavul reyecha." Have you not learned the verse which says, "Do not displace your neighbor's boundaries," from Deuteronomy 19:14? If you have a friend who owns a business and he's in the downtown part of the town, you can't just go and open up the same exact business next to him. It's called asagas gvul. You're displacing your neighbor's boundaries. It's not right. And so he's saying, how could you give charity at night? The nighttime is our domain. It's the time for the evil spirits and the demons to run around. So it's nighttime now. How can you give tzedakah? This is the time under the domain or the power of the spirits, but not for humanity. It's not the time for humans. It's the time for evil spirits to rule. Rabbi Chanina bar Papa responded to this minister of evil spirits. Does it not say in Mishlei that if you give a gift in secret, that it appeases anger? Because I am giving in the secret of the night and modestly and undercover, so therefore I'm not worried about the evil spirits. So the evil spirit then got afraid of him, and it ran away, hightailed out of there. He said, okay, if you're giving in secret, that's why you're giving at night. That power has the ability to overcome whatever forces of negativity there may be in the evening that the evil forces have. And so he was able to give tzedakah at night. But that still doesn't, that tells us why there might be a concern of giving charity at night, is that the day is given for human beings, for us to be able to transact, to interact. But at night, it's a dark time, not just physically, but it mirrors the dark time that's happening spiritually. And there are forces of negativity that have their dominion or reign at that time. And so Rabbi Chanina bar Papa's answer is, I'm giving discreetly. And that itself has its own protection. But here we have in our generation, people are giving at night and with a live auction and with a whole gala dinner, the biggest fundraisers, the big promotions, which in a way, sometimes people ask, isn't it better to give tzedakah anonymously, to give charity without the big commotion? And there is a virtue in giving discreetly and humbly. But there's also in a way an advantage to publicizing, because when a person, especially of a great stature, somebody with a tremendous amount of wealth, says, "Hey, I'm supporting this cause," then that encourages other people to say, "Hey, if he could do it, then I could do it too." And it's actually, in a way, a humbling experience, because he has to put his own sort of, maybe he wants to give anonymously, but he has to put himself out there so that it encourages other people to get involved as well. But here we have seemingly something that's breaking this ancient tradition and practice of, at night, you don't give tzedakah. As a matter of fact, we have the Chida, who was a great halachic authority and Kabbalist who lived in the late 1700s, who was a student of the Arizal, the great famed Kabbalist where most of our Kabbalistic writings come from. And he writes how Rabbeinu Arizal Zatzal, that his teacher, the Arizal, Hayanoisen Tzedakah Legaboy B'Tfilas Shachris, B'Tfilas Mincha. He would donate or give a bit of charity every morning before the morning services and afternoon before the afternoon services. V'loy b'tfilas arvis, but not by the evening services. Then he would not give. So here our question is, why or what changed, or how is it okay now?
Hello, Rabbi.
Hey, welcome. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Baruch Hashem. Thank you for coming on.
No problem.
So v'yesh levar zeis al pi divrei Admar HaZaken v'Igeres HaKodesh. We could answer this by analyzing a statement of the Alter Rebbe, the founder of the Chabad Hasidic movement, in his work called Igeres HaKodesh, his writings. How the entire focus of our divine service right now, the very heel steps of Mashiach, the last footsteps of Mashiach, that the job of our generation is the mitzvah of tzedakah.
Video's off.
Like our sages teach, Ein Yisrael Nigalin Ella B'Tzedakah, that the Jewish people will only be redeemed through charity. So now that we're right at the moment, right before redemption, the job of the hour, the calling of this time is to give tzedakah. And our sages who said that Talmud Torah, studying Torah, is equal to and therefore compensates for everything, even acts of goodness and kindness. Torah accomplishes it all. Was that was only in those days, says the Alter Rebbe. Talmud Torah, he ikar avoda etzlam, because in those generations, in the times of the Talmud, their main job was studying Torah. And therefore they were great sages, tremendous tanoim v'amorayim, scholars and sages of a caliber that we don't know of today. However, in the generation of the heels, when the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, was destroyed and the general state of the Jewish people has fallen, now our job is primarily to lift up the world through acts of giving, through tzedakah. So some of you might be familiar with this Mishnah from Tractate Peah, because it's in the morning prayers and the blessings that we traditionally say in the morning. And so the Talmud lists a number of wonderful things that a person will enjoy the fruits in this world, and the principle will remain for them in the world to come. So, when you make an investment, you have the principal and the profits. So here you could get the Perusayan, or the profits, meaning how much the stock grows. All of that you can enjoy in this world, and then the main thing, the initial investment, remains for you in the world to come. And it lists a whole bunch of really wonderful things. These are the things that a person eats the fruits, meaning the profits in this world. But the principle remains for you in the world to come. And these are the things: kivud avoim, honoring your parents; ugemilas chasadim, charity; v'hashkamas beis hamedrash, and going early to the study to study Torah, both in the morning and the evening; v'achnasas archim, welcoming guests; uvikar chaylim, visiting the sick; v'achnasas kala, providing what a bride needs in order to be able to get married; ulavayas hameis, accompanying somebody who passed away; v'iyun tefillah, focusing and lengthening and concentrating in prayer; v'havas shalom shebein adam lechaveiro v'en ish leishtai, and bringing peace between a person and his friend, or between husband and wife. And then this is the golden line: v'talmud Torah keneged kulam, but the study of Torah is equal to them all. So you study Torah, you get the Karen and the principle and the fruits of all of these actions. This is what the Tractate Peah, the Talmud, teaches us about all of these wonderful mitzvot, very essential, very core, beautiful items that we can do, but then it sort of qualifies it with saying, and learning Torah, if you just sit and you focus and you learn Torah all day, it's as if you've taken care of all of those things. So how could the Alter Rebbe say that that was only in their days? But nowadays, the main thing is tzedakah. We know Torah doesn't change. And so if this idea of a Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, that there's such a tremendous focus and importance of studying Torah, that it's equal to all those other mitzvahs, including charity, then how can we say, but the mitzvah right now is to give tzedakah? So the truth is, the Torah doesn't change, and the principle remains the same, but the world changes. And so as the world changes, our obligations don't change, but because the situation is different, they call for a different thing. And so there is a principle of a mitzvah shezman gram, that if you have a mitzvah of the hour, like it's Sukkot, and you got to shake the lulav and the yasrog, because that's a time-bound specific mitzvah for right then, when it's the first day of Sukkot, that pushes away everything, even studying Torah, because that's the mitzvah of the hour. And so in a broad sort of generational thing, the mitzvah of our hour, of our generation, is the mitzvah of tzedakah. We are the doers, the movers and shakers, the ones who are going to bring Mashiach, and therefore our calling is really to give, even more than it is to study. Now, of course, as we spoke about it in previous times, it's very important to have set times to study, but there was a time where, if you look at all of Jewish history like a grand body, there was a generation that was the head, and their main focus and job was to set that groundwork and study Torah, if that meant just sleeping on the floor and having a dry piece of bread with a little bit of water, just barely getting by, and just focusing on studying for 20 hours a day and then sleeping for 4. That was their life. But that was the calling of their generation. But in this broad picture of the generations, we are at the feet and at the very ends of this cosmic body, where we're called the ikvasa de Mashiach, the heels of Mashiach, the very the very feet of Mashiach. And just like we spoke about last week, washing the hands and feet with the wash basin because of our involvement with the material world, our job in this generation is to be so involved in the material world that you become exceedingly wealthy, exceedingly prosperous, and use that to give tzedakah in a magnanimous, unprecedented way. And we find that in this generation, the type of philanthropy and magnanimous giving is something that, as much as the Jewish people have always been into tzedakah and giving, there's something unique about this generation in particular, and their ability to put a strong emphasis of their entire life into giving. So we'll go back into the Sikha, into the transcript of the Rebbe's talk, where he says this also explains the custom to hold fundraising events on Matzi Shabbos, and why specifically here in America, this focus or change really happened. V'zui gam asvara. The fesher ha'avoda shemino gzel arech magbias tzedakah b'matzei Shabbos hischum medina zu dafka. This also explains why the custom to hold gala dinners and fundraising events on Matzei Shabbos originated specifically in this country, in America. When the Jewish people first came to America, what kind of situation was it? It was like, to take a verse that says, in order to sustain us, God sent me here before you, like out of the famine and the deprivation that Jacob and his children had in Israel, that they were forced to go down to Egypt. And so similarly, it was because of oppression and hardship that we ended up in America. Even though in the beginning, when we first came to America, you could ask the question, why did Hashem do this to us? To bring the Jewish people to a land that's parched and dry, without water, where a person had to become burnt out and exhausted over all of their godly things. When people came to America in the beginning, it was not set up for Jewish life. There were no yeshivas, there were no places to study Torah. It was, spiritually speaking, like a dry and parched land. And even in regards to the material dimension, or the material well-being, America, everybody heard in the old country that the streets were paved with gold, right? As a matter of fact, there was an immigrant who came to America, and he saw a gold coin on the floor, and he didn't bother to pick it up because he heard America's paved with gold. So I'm sure there's many more. There's no reason to pick that up. But the truth is, it was not easy for those early generations. They really had to work a lot of times 6 days a week, even on Shabbos, just to barely get by, have a bite to eat. There was nothing. And the concept like you could take off on Shabbos was so unheard of in those times. It was not set up. You would lose your job every week if you did that. A boss wouldn't keep you on if you refused to work on Shabbos. It was very, very difficult to maintain a Jewish lifestyle, or to even get by on the very bare minimums and basics in those days. And so at first it looks like, why did Hashem send us here? It's a land where we don't have the great yeshivas and study halls of old, and we also don't have the material wealth, and everything's going pretty tough. But but after the upheaval that happened on the other side of the river, in those countries in the old world, Rahman al-Islam, God save us. The reason for the Jewish people coming to America became evident, became clear. So that they can accumulate a lot of money, and they'd be able to be in a position to help out, to rescue their brethren who were stuck in the old country. Here's not really the place to get into the particulars of the hardship and the upheaval and the chaos that we saw. But in regards to what it is that we're talking about here, the concept of tzedakah and the new custom here to be able to give charity at all times, since this country excels in the giving of tzedakah, therefore the custom became to make fundraising events even on Saturday nights, to show that we're doing it at night. This is something that's so pertinent, it's so important that it's got to be done whenever it can be done, because this is the calling of the hour, as we previously mentioned. And so this happens specifically in our time and in this place. The external reason is just a superficial reason why is because on Sunday everybody's off work. Because Wall Street's closed. So that's why they do it specifically on Matzei Shabbos, on Saturday night. So that way people don't sneak out early. I got to go to sleep and I got to wake up early in the morning, but they're able to sit, and then the Gevirim, the wealthy, can get up and they can give their speech, and nobody will interrupt them. They'll be able to talk on and on, because if they give money, they also want to be able to talk and without people getting up in the middle. But that's just the external, the superficial reason why we do it Saturday night. But the inner reason, the deeper meaning, the spiritual dimension of what's going on, of why we give at night now, is Mekivan Shebesayis Managolus Mudgish Yetzer Hatzayrich V'Hanitzchias the mitzvah tzedakah, because in this time, at the end of exile, tzedakah becomes the most important and immediate need, the mitzvah, the calling of the hour, mitzvah shazman grama kenizker le'il ba'arucha. And so because this is the immediate mitzvah of the hour, the time, therefore, it's not something that can just be pushed off. It's something that can be done at any time. And because it can be done at any time, it really should be done at all times. And so what we mentioned before about the domain of the evil forces having some sort of jurisdiction or power over the night, that is a reality that's actually changing through our actions. It was before, it was like Hasagas Gvul, it was encroaching on someone else's territory to give tzedakah at night. Like, this is not your time, this is not your zone. Now, as we prepare the world, we're spiritualizing it and getting it ready for the ultimate revelation, the coming of Mashiach, and that the night will shine like day. Then even during the night, not only are we able to give tzedakah, but by specifically giving tzedakah, whenever it is, day, night, doesn't matter, we're able to now transform and light up a dominion that was previously outside of our domain. So it's pretty cool. Actually, the Rebbe once told a story about how when he was in synagogue one night, he, eventually went into his pocket, he took some coins and he put it in the tzedakah box. And this was like before he became Rebbe, when he was a younger man, and somebody came over to him and he said, hey, doesn't everybody know what it says in the writings of the Arizal that we don't give tzedakah at night? So afterwards, he met with his Rebbe, the previous Chabad Rebbe, who would also become his father-in-law. And he told him about the chastisement that he received about giving tzedakah at night. And his Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, responded. He said, probably the person who scolded you for giving charity at night, probably he doesn't give charity during the day either. And therefore, he felt uncomfortable, he felt bothered by seeing somebody giving tzedakah at night. It's like you could see what, it's like nowadays, times of exile, there's a certain restraint on the level of joy and simcha that we're allowed to express. And so some people say, even when it's a holiday and you're getting too joyous, the Chassidim get too excited, too happy, and so you could say something similar. It's like, probably even if the temple was standing, you would want to temper the joy. You just want to dial it down no matter what. So in regards to tzedakah, we have the ability now to light up the darkness, to light up the night through our acts of goodness and kindness and charity, no matter when it's needed. I mean, even even back in the olden days, if somebody comes to you and needs your help, whether it's day or night, you help them out. It's just that in addition to the mitzvah of helping somebody out who presents themselves to you, you have a mitzvah to go out of your way to try to find somebody to help. And therefore, people will make it a point, in their morning prayers, and sometimes before their afternoon prayers as well, to specifically put a coin in a charity box. So they're doing the act of giving on a regular basis. Because even somebody who in their entire income comes through the communal charity fund, and for whatever reason, maybe they're disabled or whatever, even that person has an obligation at least once a year to find somebody who needs help and to help him, to give tzedakah. There's no person that's, and the Jewish idea of tzedakah is just, it doesn't have to do so much with how much money you have, or it's that each and every person has the mitzvah and therefore the responsibility and the obligation to help someone else out. And so generally throughout history, we would look for those opportunities during the day. But here, we because the calling of the hour, the job of our generation is to overflow the physical world society with so much acts of goodness and kindness and charity that we look for it, and we do these mitzvot at all times, day and night. And so I'll conclude with one thought that also brings out a unique type of charity that you might not necessarily have been thinking about when we say tzedakah or charity throughout this conversation, because we live in a unique time, and people's needs change with the time as well. So if somebody's really thirsty, for example, and you give them bread, you're not really helping them with what they need. Or if somebody's extremely hungry and you give them water. So let's look inside for this last section, which gives us an insight into a unique type of tzedakah that we have access to and that each and every person can give. V'yamru Rabbeinu Zechaynu Levracha, our sages of blessed memory teach, Asher al yedei nesinas tzedakah la'ani, hatfila poyeles umamsheches chayim toivim geula v'yeshua parnasa v'chalkala. By giving tzedakah to a poor person, you bring about good life, redemption, salvation, livelihood, sustenance, amazing things for this individual and for yourself. A person, as well as the spiritual angels and heavenly beings, are made up of a body and soul. So we have tzedakah that has to do with the body and tzedakah that has to do with the soul. Even the spiritual angels have, relative to their level, the body and the soul. And so a human being has a body and also has a soul. The ani beguf, just like you could have a poor person in the body and the bodily needs, ani benefesh. You could have a poor person in regards to their soul, and the needs of their soul. And so in regards to tzedakah as well, you have tzedakah for the material and tzedakah for the spiritual. Like it says, our sages teach, how does one fulfill the obligation of, if you see somebody naked, clothe him? How often do you walk into the streets? I mean, maybe in Eureka it's a little bit different, but in most places, you don't just walk around, you see people walking around naked. So how do you fulfill this verse? If you see somebody walking around naked, then you clothe him. Ella imre isa adam she'ein by divrei Torah. But if you see somebody bare and naked of words of Torah, bring him into your house. Teach him how to read Shema, how to do the prayers. And teach him how to observe the mitzvahs. Show him how to do it. And just like each and every one of us hope and wish for a great life, both materially as well as spiritually, that we need to exert ourselves to help others, not just physically, but spiritually as well. So that when you stand before God, each and every one can stand with their large calculation, their big portion of good deeds, large in proportion to their allot, to their everything. Giving it their all, both in regards to physically helping someone, as well as giving it their all to spiritually uplift or sustain someone. And just like in regards to the obligation of charity, even somebody who's extremely poor has the obligation to give tzedakah. Because there is no poor person who can't find some way to help a poor friend. Similarly, in regards to this spiritual tzedakah that we're giving, even somebody who's just in their beginning stages of learning and spiritual growth and developments, they could call themselves spiritually poor. That doesn't let you off the hook. You're going to say, oh, I'm not the rabbi, or I'm not so learned, I never went to yeshiva. Because just like somebody who doesn't have a lot of money still has an obligation to give tzedakah to help somebody out physically, similarly, no matter how spiritually developed or how much somebody knows, they have the obligation and the ability to give this spiritual tzedakah. Because there is no Jewish man or woman because there is not one individual, there's no man or woman who does not possess the ability to have a positive influence to bring their fellow Jews closer to Hashem and closer to Torah and mitzvot observance. And so this is really a very enriching and empowering message that our generation is the generation of tzedakah. And that means both materially to help people out in a magnanimous and an abundant way more than ever before, as well as when it comes to spiritually sustaining and uplifting our brothers and sisters, that each and every one of us has both the ability and therefore the responsibility to give that spiritual boost, that tzedakah, to help their fellow become closer to Hashem. And like the Rebbe would often say, if you know Aleph, teach Aleph. If you know Beis, you can teach Beis. Aleph, it's like the ABCs of Judaism. The Aleph itself is the pintala, that dot of our essential oneness and connection with Hashem. Aleph is one. And we, together with God and the Torah, are all one, bound up. Like the Aleph has a yud on top, a little dot on the top, a dot on the bottom, and then a line that connects them. So you have Hashem above and the Jewish people below, and then our faith, or the Torah and mitzvot, that bind us and connect us. And so, in other words, knowing Aleph means that you have a connection to Hashem, and you feel that and you sense that and you share that in one way or another with your fellow. And that's the call of the hour, the tzedakah that we have in this generation is both the material tzedakah to ensure that people have what they need for their bodily needs, as well as watching out for and taking care of the neshama, of the spiritual needs.
Boom, Rabbi.
Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Okay. Thank you for the class.
A pleasure. Yeah, the Edith wrote, the pasuk reminds me, the verse reminds me of what I say. You give what you can or what you're able with what you have. Yeah, absolutely. There is in a way a tendency when it comes to tzedakah to in a way just go all out. But we do have, especially in our time, the ability to set ourselves up in a way that's logical and sustainable, and to give tzedakah within your means, and doing so is something that really has a big impact. You don't need to be exceedingly financially wealthy in order to have a big impact on another.
Well, I really love the emphasis put on tzedakah in the Jewish religion, and on spiritual charity as well, because I did have a question about that from the beginning, and then a lot of it was explained, because if the law was not to that in the evening you wouldn't give charity, and I was wondering why it was only charity. If there's evil spirits around, why, I mean, any sort of mitzvah or even Torah study, and back in the day, Torah study was more important. Why was charity the only thing that was singled out that would be influenced by the evil spirits? So encompassing spiritual charity makes more sense. But yeah, that was some of the question.
Right. But also, like, charity is very much extroverted, whereas Torah is very much inside. So you're in the base medrash, you're in the study hall, you're in your home, and so you're sort of reserved in your private domain. Tzedakah is about going out and having this broad influence on the world, whether that's physical, like helping the body or helping the soul. It's very much external. And that the demons say, hey, this is our domain, don't infringe.
Okay.
You stay in your home, we won't bother you, we won't come disturb you in your sleep, but you can lock your doors at night. Actually, one of the things that Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid mentions, that you shouldn't completely seal off your windows or doors, like permanently shut them, because he says then the demons don't have anywhere to like sneak out at night, that they can slip through the cracks or something. So in a way, they'll respect your space and your private space, but then, leave the world as a wild jungle. But now the time is no, this is the calling of the hour. We're going to go out of our homes and out of that inner sacred space and bring that sacred, godly home to the world around us.
Interesting. Yeah.
Can say, Varda, that if somebody gives me some money for charity at night, it's more likely to go to an illicit purpose. Maybe I'll go to the cantina or the casino. Who knows? But if you gave me money in the morning, maybe I'll get some coffee or some breakfast.
Okay. That's true. And it's such a different world now. I mean, electricity and people working 9 to 5, it's different than it was hundreds of years ago.
Yeah. Right. And it could be looked at in a negative light, like, oh, they're forsaking the Torah to be involved in the world. But here in the classic, Rebbe outlook of seeing the good and the positive and everything, is like this drive to be on Wall Street, to make it big, to be out there is not a negative thing. Like, this is the job of our hour, is to bring together and cultivate a tremendous amount of prosperity and wealth for all of humanity to grow and gain from. And the level of living that we have now is, even the poorest amongst us have a level of comfort and living that the kings of previous generations didn't have.
Yeah.
Rabbi, I like the mitzvah earlier on the list of visiting the sick.
Yeah.
And then, it seems relative for right now. And I wonder, can these evil night forces, through fear or through stopping us from visiting the sick and separating us from each other, can they retard the whole Mashiach coming?
So Mashiach's coming is a forward-moving train process that we could speed up, but can't be really stopped. So they could try, and they could try to trip you up from being able to do your mitzvot, which will slow things down. But ultimately, we have both the ability and the fortitude to be able to make it happen.
Maybe it'll backfire and then everyone will come together after experimenting with the idea of separation, isolation.
Yeah, it's a great Mishnah from Tractate Peah, the Elu Devarim, that I hear my daughters sing in the morning when they're in online school. It's one of the first prayers that they learn after the Moda'ani and the morning blessings. Should we look at it one more time? Elu devarim she'adam eichel peireseyen be'olam hazeh va'keren kayemes le'olam haba. These are the things that a person eats their fruits, the profits, in this world. V'hakeren kayemes, but the principle remains for the world to come. Meaning you didn't use up any of your reward. Like if you put $1,000 into your 401k, and then you can't take out any of the even the profits until you retire. Here you could start taking out the profits right away, and the principle remains for the world to come. The mitzvah itself is something that remains untouched. It's like you're not using it up. Honoring your mother and father, doing acts of kindness, giving charity, waking up early to go to the study hall in the morning and then going back in the evening, welcoming in guests, visiting the sick, providing for a bride, accompanying the dead, putting yourself into and concentrating on prayer, bringing peace between a person and his friend, or bringing peace between man and his wife. But Talmud Torah, the study of Torah, is equal to them all. So as we said, it's not that reality has changed. It's true. Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. There's a tremendous value and virtue in studying Torah, but we have a mitzvah of the hour that in a way pushes that away. So anytime that we're not studying Torah, the calling of the hour, or anytime we do have the opportunity to be giving tzedakah and involved in helping another, which means going out and being prosperous and being involved in the world, that is the job of our generation, and it's the calling of the hour, which even pushes away this really amazing mitzvah of Talmud Torah that's equal to all of those wonderful things.
Yeah, this subject actually has been all day today.
And yesterday.
Brandon needs the surgery. It's supposed to be Thursday. We've been